Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to the November 16th, 2021 legislative session of the Wicomico County Council. I'd like to call the meeting to order with the opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'd like to join us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven.
And give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Hurley, can you read the items on the consent agenda?
Good morning, Mr. President, council members, ladies and gentlemen. We have several items on the consent agenda this morning. We have the legislative minutes from November the 2nd. We have open work session minutes from September the 21st pertaining to the quarterly work session with the Wicomico County Board of Education. We have open work session minutes from September the 21st pertaining to the process for legal service requests. We have open work session minutes from September the 21st on the update from the Wicomico County Health Department, Division of Environmental Health. We have open work session minutes from October the 5th on the update of council goals for fiscal year 2022. And we have open work session minutes from October the 5th on the discussion on Compensation Allowance Commission, as well as open work session minutes from October the 19th on the discussion of the Compensation Allowance Commission.
All right, need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Chair votes aye. This time I'd like to recognize Ms. Gail Barkovich and Mr. Matt Holloway, former council members. It was a pleasure working with those great people. Right now we have a proclamation to recognize the month of November as Family Court Awareness Month. We should have Ms. Christy Staples.
Maybe she's running a little late.
All right, well, we can hold off on that.
Okay.
All right. Ms. Hurley?
Okay, so the first item on the legislative agenda this morning is a public hearing on resolution number 123-2021. This is approving the purchase of a portion of mitigation bank credits for the creation of a Maple Dam Conservation Wetland Mitigation Bank located in Dorchester County, Maryland, and described as parcel 20, lot 2, area equals 44.139 plus or minus, on a plat entitled Agricultural Subdivision Plat on the lands of Maple Dam Conservation LLC in the 13th Election District, Dorchester County, Maryland, tax map 52, grid 16, parcel 20, lot 1. A public hearing notice was posted on the county's website and published in the local newspaper stating that a public hearing would be held this morning at 10 a.m. And we have Mr. Tony Rudy here, airport manager, if there are any questions.
Mr. Rudy, you can join us. This time, I'm going to open the floor to a public hearing on this resolution number 123-2021. If there are any public comments on resolution number 123-2021, please state your name and county of residence. Any public comments? Okay, going to close the floor on the public hearing for resolution number 123-2021. Need a motion to approve resolution number 123-2021.
So moved.
Got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I got a couple of questions.
Yes, Mr. McCain.
Tony, when you were here the other day, the last time, is there a deadline that we're up against regarding this? I know you mentioned some date that was of significance.
Well, we want to get this, we've been working on this for several months now, this agreement. The longer we delay, there's more opportunity for other buyers that could actually purchase these credits, so it'd be at a disadvantage to the airport not to move on this sooner rather than later.
Well, yeah, actually, I did a little research. I think if my research was correct, they only have about, we have to purchase, what is it, 15, 13, what is it?
13.24
13 point
acres.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they only have like 15 or something left in that bank.
Yes, there's a couple, there's about a half an acre that the airport needs for another project that'll be coming at the next council meeting. And there's, I believe in the agreement, it states there's a third party purchasing, I believe is another 2 acres. So we're really at the limits of this right now. So if someone else was to come in and need this land, it could prevent us from doing the development we need to do with this.
Right. Another question I have we pursued the possibility of doing this ourselves on land that we own? Like, I'm going to throw this out here, like Pirates Wharf, for example. Creating is that something you can do, fee in lieu, is that an option?
So there's an option, and I have Mary Ashburn Pearson from Delta.
I figured this would be her chance to jump in, so.
The way MDE typically wants this done is if there's bank credits available, that's the number one choice. The second choice is the in lieu fee, correct? And then the third choice is to do, I forgot what it's called exactly.
It's called permittee responsible mitigation, what you'd be describing, which is creating your own wetlands, and then the county would be responsible for having those wetlands permitted and approved by the regulatory agencies, and then 5 to 10 years of monitoring and testing and reporting.
Well, I'll just say this, we can create wetlands and monitor that for 5 or 10 years on property we own at a fraction of the cost that this is going to cost us.
I don't know, I can't comment on the cost of what it would cost, but again, the regulatory agencies who are holding the permit for this project have stated that their first choice for mitigation is to purchase credits from a mitigation bank. So we've coordinated with the Corps of Engineers and the MDE during this process, and they're both amenable to purchasing from the Maple Dam Bank.
Yes.
Mr. Holloway?
I'm still digesting, but I'm done.
Yeah. You said that at some point in time, there's more property that the airport may need to buy for this, from this group?
Yes,
Okay.
it's roughly half an acre
So-
that we need for some tree clearing.
Yeah. So the airport's expanding, we hope, all the time, right? So in 2 or 3 years, 5 years, is there going to be another expansion that we're going to have more mitigation done?
This will take care of our needs, I guess our immediate needs.
Immediate needs.
And I'm trying to remember off our master plan if there were, do you remember, Mary Ashburn, if there are any other lands we need to mitigate? I don't think there's anything in the immediate future.
But there could be. There could, through expansion in the next few years.
Well,
I mean, we're wanting our airport to grow, so.
Yeah, no, the areas we have for planned development, I believe this will take care of those immediate needs. But
That's
if
correct.
we're talking long-term down the road,
Right.
that could change.
Yeah.
As the land changes and wetlands develop over time.
So was there any exploration done on how much it would cost for us to do our own wetlands? Did we explore that at all?
I'm not sure if that was talked about before I came on board, but like we said, that was MDE and the Army Corps has agreed to this course of action. That's their first preferred action, is to buy the credits that are already established.
I'd like to see us explore that before I know we're up against the wall on this other, but it's, $119,000 an acre. That's like Bill said last time, that's over and above commercial, isn't it, Bill? Retail?
Highway commercial land.
Yeah. It's,
But
the other thing,
And unfortunately, I did do a little research on this, like the ones across the bay, and I think they're like 200 and something an acre, which is unfortunate as well. But it just feels like everybody's being held ransom. It's easy for the Army Corps and MDE to say, "Oh yeah, buy it," not their money, but also I get the timing. I mean, I do realize there's some urgency. There's a sense of urgency that exists with this as well. So it's a struggle.
it's amazing to me that we didn't explore the other option. I mean, you say you don't know that they did or didn't, but probably you should have known if they had it done, so I'm assuming they didn't. The other thing we could do is contact our congressmen and senators and see if we could get any kind of a waiver possibly on this. I mean, this is, what are we going to do in 2 or 3 years if we want to expand again? And there is no land available to purchase like this. We're going to have to do our own wetlands anyway. So that's something we possibly would have to do.
I don't think that'll be an issue in a few years. Most of our developed areas are going to be in places that don't need this mitigation. But the fact, the runway, you can only move the runway in one direction, so it's really affecting.
Why is that? Why can you only move the runway in one direction?
That was all part of our master plan study and the impacts that would have on construction going the other way.
Why couldn't you move it the other way?
Well, it would cost a lot more. First of all, you have to, road you have to remove, there's more land you would have to acquire, a number of other things.
Well, I know we've moved one road to expand a runway already. We moved Fuchs Road. So I don't know, whether the option would be there. I'm sure that would be expensive too, but.
Mr. Rudy, can you introduce who you brought to the table?
Yes, this is Mary Ashburn Pearson with Delta Airport Consultants.
All right. Any more comments? Discussion? Ms. Ackley?
I have a quick question. Is this something that other counties are looking into purchasing their own mitigation banks? Have they done that anywhere in the state?
Yes, every county who develops in Maryland has to deal with the same federal and state requirements for wetland mitigation. This is not unique to this area. And as we said, the federal mitigation rule does outline 3 options for mitigating wetland impacts. So the first option, per the law, is the purchasing from a certified bank. Unfortunately, in Maryland, in this primary and secondary service area, there is only one bank, the Maple Dam Bank. Again, the permitting agencies will push us to, buy from banks first. That's the first option. The second option is the in lieu fee payment, which is actually kind of the same thing, buying a credit from the state, not from a third-party private bank, from the state. And the cost of that is $135,000 per credit. And then the third option, as we've mentioned, is permitting responsible mitigation, which is actually creating your own wetlands. So you can always do a combination of mitigation methods if that's necessary. For example, if the Maple Dam Bank only had 5 credits available, then this project requires something like 13.2. So we would have to mix and match, and that's certainly something that other counties have done.
Okay.
But it is a lot of responsibility to purchase a parcel, place easements on it, go through the regulatory process to have both the federal and state governments approve it for mitigation purposes, and then have some plan in place for mitigating, continually testing and monitoring for, again, 5 to 10 year period, whatever they would require.
So this would be monitored by, if the county was to do that, that would involve staff to create that and to monitor it.
Right, the county would be liable for monitoring the wetlands. Okay. So the clean one and done solution is typically just purchasing from a wetland bank, and then the bank itself is responsible for all the permitting and mitigation and monitoring and reporting. This is a transaction between the county and the bank, and it's over once the check clears.
Thank you.
Any more comments?
I'd like to make a motion, we table this until this was explored as far as the, what it would cost. Did you say we're already doing a migration somewhere else, Bill?
Mitigation.
Litigation?
No, we're not doing one to my knowledge. We're not doing anything, right? I mean,
Not at the
I
airport.
look at
I thought we
John.
were doing one at Village Down River or something like that. Didn't we build one there?
Forest.
Forest mitigation,
okay.
yeah.
So I'd like to make a motion, we table this until it be further explored, possibly getting in touch with our federal legislators and seeing what it would cost to do the migration.
Ms. Holloway has a motion on the floor to table. Do we have a second on the amendment? All right, I guess your table dies. Any more discussion? That was worth it. Any more discussion? All right,
President,
Mr.
say-
Hastings.
I did talk to a landowner this morning that does forest mitigation work, and they're actually looking at potentially doing wetland mitigation, getting into that component. So I think our biggest issue here, obviously, is market forces. We don't have enough competition in order to drive down the costs for us. So in that sense, I think it'd be good to reach out. It would be nice for the county. For our executive branch to maybe explore this, but obviously it's not something that we're going to be able to do in the future on our own easily. We'd have to hire staff and go through a long process, but we could certainly start that process to look at that as a third option, because I think we're going to continue to grow as a county in other kind of ways. But yeah, I think in the meantime, it'd be nice to continue the option to reach out to more landowners who have the ability to do different types of mitigation work. And hopefully that'll increase the competition so that we won't have to pay such a large amount of money in the future.
Right, I agree with you. Any more comments? All right, all in favor of resolution number 123-2021, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Chair votes aye. Resolution number 123-2021 passes unanimously. Ms. Harley?
Okay, next on the agenda is a presentation by the Redistricting Committee.
Thank you, Mr.
We
Rudy.
have the committee chair, Gail Barkovich, here. We have Mr. Frank McKenzie from the GIS Department. And we have Bernadette Kennedy here, who is a member of the Redistricting Committee as well. If you guys want to come forward.
There you go.
Hi there.
Set that up first one. Good morning. We have, Mr. McKenzie has our executive summary for you this morning, and also the redistricting presentation, which I think you have all received copies of. Just so the public knows, all the information from our meeting, our minutes, all the maps are all online on the county website under County Council. We have our last set of minutes to be posted, but once we have those approved, those will go up so the public can see all that information before you have the public hearing, since the council is required to hold the public hearing on this. So just to do a couple of short things, since this information is on the county website.
Ms. Barkovich?
Yes.
Can you make introductions before we get started?
Oh, I'm sorry, Laura did, so this is Bernadette Kennedy. She is on our commission, and I think you were appointed by Ernie? No?
No. I
Josh.
think it was Josh.
Josh, okay, Josh Hastings.
Yes, thank you.
And you all should know Frank McKenzie, who works in our county.
Yes.
He's very familiar with all of this because he worked on these maps 10 years ago. So he's, what's this, the third time you've done this? Second time?
Wow.
So we have a pro here.
Correction.
But just for the public's information, I was just going to say a few words. I wasn't going to read what's up there. I don't think they necessarily need to do that. But the county is required after each census, which is every 10 years, to appoint a redistricting commission to basically balance out the 5 councilmatic districts as best we can. So each one of you who represents a district is kind of equal in the number of people that you represent. And after our last meeting, I kind of went hunting because I was asked how long you all have been a 7-member council. And I'm guessing that this information is pretty correct, but back in 1990 was when the council changed from a 5-member council to a 7-member council. Prior to 1990, it was a 5-member council, and each council member was elected at large. So I thought that was interesting information. I've shared that with the commission, and I think it's all been shared with you too, so you have that information. Now, we have several things we had attempted to do in the maps. We had 6 meetings. We had 6 maps that we looked at. We tried several options. One was to get the deviation closer to, lower than the 5% that is allowed by law. We had looked at putting entire towns together. For instance, Hebron, Willard, Pittsfield, all those are towns. Put those together. We ended up, on our 6 maps, we went from moving just 52 people to another option. The most was 8,379 people. And so all those maps and all that information is going to be in the presentation that you get today. And I think with that, we'll let Frank, do you want to say anything right now, or we'll wait till Frank does his? Okay, Frank, why don't you go ahead and just run through, that's the second page that's in that for your review and for the public's review, and this is the important piece, I think. So we're going to let Frank go through this, and maybe you want to make a few comments as you go along. And if you want to make some comments as this would go along too, it's up to you. Okay? All right.
Well, good morning. I appreciate that you all have received this information in your briefing packet. This information is also on the county website, so I don't think I should go ahead and read line by line everything that's in the presentation, but I will go ahead and hit on some of the more important aspects of the process and where we ended up and how we ended up there. 7 members of the committee. Their names are presented here. Staff was supported by Laura Hurley, Paul Wilbur, Mr. Illuminati, and myself. There were some mandates with this project. First off, every 10 years after the census comes out, we have to go through this process. And the first thing you do is look to see, okay, if the county's grown, how did it grow? Where did it grow? Are the districts, is the growth in a district caused it's such that it's too large or too small for the population growth? So we still need to maintain 5 districts. The districts should be substantially equal in population and make them as compact and contiguous as possible. It must be a minority district. Minority for the Census Bureau is defined as Black, African American. The districts, again, should be equal in population. But the council also strives to move as few people as possible in order to obtain what we need to obtain to maintain our district equality. One thing that we have to deal with is after the during the 2010 census, the state of Maryland required that you not count individuals who are incarcerated in the district where they are housed. What they wanted you to do was to allocate them to their last known previous address. So this is a Maryland situation. I don't know how far this goes across the country, but it is in Maryland. In this case, the Census Bureau puts out their data, and then it's given to, when the state of Maryland received it, they take it, analyze it, and find out where these folks are incarcerated, where they last lived, and they apply that information to the local jurisdiction's information. So in this case, it takes about a month once the initial data comes out for that data to make it down to our level. And we really can't start much of the detail work until we receive that. And that was not received until September of this year. So the initial population was 103,588. With the adjusted population, when you take into consideration the incarcerated folks, there were 689 more people added to the county. The goal of this and the requirements are that each district must be equal in population. But it's impossible to hit that number on the money. So they allow you a deviation of 5% below or above that population. It's called the ideal population. So they do allow a range of 19,803 to 21,887 people per district. Shows what we went through the last time. Total population was 99,188 83 people. And this chart you'll see below, we go through this for every analysis of every district. It tells you the adjusted population of the district, the deviation of that population to the ideal, the percent of deviation, and then it breaks down the racial characteristics of black and white population and percentage of black. The goal is the percentage of black population in one district should be above 50%, and the county has always recommended that we go as much above 50% as possible. And in 2010, we were almost 58% black in District 1.
Excuse me. Why does the county say that it should be above or 58 or close to 58% as possible?
They didn't say 58, but as high as possible.
Why?
They wanted to ensure that a black person would be nominated or elected to a district, so that they figured that the highest they could get it, the more likely that is to occur.
The law is 51%, correct?
The law is 51%. This is the map that was adopted after the 2010 census. District 1 is our minority district. So when we receive the latest data, you'll see that our new population is 104,227 adjusted. There's another chart where I compared each of the districts from the growth of those districts from 2010 to 2020. And it's generally moderate growth. You know, the county has been growing basically 1,000 people a year for the last 30, 40 years. The last census, we were about half that. Now, a lot of this was attributed to the COVID. There were a lot of people just didn't want to fill out the forms, didn't want to bother. There's also a situation in the university where we had issues with collecting information. This slide compares 2010 to 2020. It's probably better viewed online where you can really see it. What this slide represents is after we receive our data, first thing we do is look at, okay, what do our numbers look like for the new data based on existing districts. The area in green, 4 of the 5 districts were in compliance with the information. Only one district, District 4, was out of compliance. That had a deviation of negative 5.11%. In this case, if they had 24 more people, they would have been in compliance, wouldn't have to do anything. The districts could stand. So as Gail mentioned, over the course of the last few months, the committee has met 6 times and they've reviewed 6 different plans. These are different tables from each of the different plans. And each of these would have worked, but a lot of them moved a lot of people from one district to another, and that was kind of not what the council had requested that the committee comply with. Each of the plans we looked at how many people were moved for a particular plan. And as Gail mentioned, we had as low as 52 people in what we call our minimum impact. The highest was 8,379 people. So it became evident that some of the more ones where they tried to be more equitable, where they tried to keep the towns together, City of Salisbury, you know, they really can't put into one district. That has to be divided up. But they considered looking at Pittsfield, Willards, Fruitland, having all those not be split in a district. But by doing that, it caused a lot of people to be moved, and it became an issue that they did not want to pass to you all to continue with. This is a typical map that shows, you know, as an area is moved, how many people were moved in a particular district. Here is the table as recommended by the committee. This was the minimal impact where only 52 people were moved. All of the districts fall within the allowed deviation of -5 or +5% deviation. In District 1, we have a minority district. We are at 57.67% adjusted black population. This is one of the two areas that were moved. One area was, there was the area near the city park that was in District 1 that really was like an appendage that needed to be cleaned up. There were no people living there, but this is more of a mapping adjustment. But there were some areas where we needed to get the population of 4 to get within the deviation range. So there's another area just south of that in the city park where there's no population involved. But there's an area of a subdivision called Village in the Park where there were 49 people. Those people were moved from District 3 to District 4. We also looked at the town of Willards. South of Route 50 used to be in District 3. The committee said, well, let's see if we can keep Willards intact. So there were 3 people living south of Route 50 that were moved to District 5. So this map is the map that was proposed. And in this case, the black lines that you see, the darker lines, those are the existing boundaries. And pretty much everything follows the same except for those 2 areas that I showed you. There's also discussion as to making sure that all council members and Board of Education members remain in their current districts. That is accommodated. This was taken care of with this plan. There are no people, no council members or education folks moved one district to another.
I was wondering about the Willards one because it looked like it was cutting it close.
It's closed. So this table compares, the 2010 to 2020. And this shows the map comparison. And except for those 2 areas, everything is identical to the last census and last redistricting. So that's the end of this presentation. If you have any questions.
All right. First, I want to thank you all for what you did. And before you leave, I have certificates of appreciation for everyone. So on behalf of the County Council and the county, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments?
No, I would just say the same thing. Thank you very much, because there's a lot of angst when we realized what we had to do and what our time frame was, especially with the COVID issues and trying to get the numbers in. And I'm really surprised to see that you even reviewed so many options instead of just punting and defaulting to what might or might not be the easiest, but to evaluate all the options. And then I think this is a great conclusion to come up with something that doesn't seriously impact that many people, but still is fair to the entire county. So I'd like to thank you for executing this as well as you did.
Thank you.
Yeah, likewise, I'll share that similar comment. I think, I know you all had a lot of meetings and did a lot of work, and, but at the end of the day, the goal was, we want to impact the community as little as possible. And, our population didn't change very much, comparatively. So, you wouldn't expect, a real significant impact. But you've reviewed a lot of different scenarios, but in the end, I think you've come back with something that's very, very palatable. And, I mean, I like what I see and what I've heard, and I know you've all put a lot of hard work into it. So, and, I think speaking on behalf of all the council members, we're very appreciative.
That's Mr. Holloway?
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you also. One of the complaints I hear around election time in the past is if people have been moved out of the district they've been, or if their polling places have changed. And I know you didn't have any say in that, and I guess that'll be coming along, so
Yes,
we'll
it will.
probably hear some of that next year, where people voted one place last election, next time they got to find somewhere else to vote. So we'll hear about that, but thank you all for what you did. Appreciate it.
Right, Ms. Ackley?
I wanted to thank you all, too. I truly appreciate everything that you've done, and Mr. McKenzie, how you created all these beautiful maps, and Ms. Barkovich, I was the one who had the question on it when we went to 7 members, and so I appreciate you researching that, and it kind of clarified, because I know there was some talk of making 7 districts instead of 5, so I appreciate it. Thanks.
Ms. Hastings?
Well, I mean, everybody's already said it, so ditto. Thank you very much. Honestly, it looks good. We were actually super impressed with the fact how quickly you've got things together. We were originally thinking, oh, we might not have anything till in hand till late December or something like that, and for you to be able to pull this together this quickly and to do so with minimal impacts, great work. Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out how Mr. McKenzie's been here 50 years.
Jeez.
Mr. Davis, do you have anything?
All I can say is thank you for all your work you've done.
That's a lot of hard work. Anybody else have any comments?
No, your presentation did it.
Yes, it was excellent. All right, so if you would, somebody meet me at the podium.
With me. Is Frank included in that too?
Yes.
All right, Frank.
Do we have one for Mr. McKenzie?
Yeah.
Yes. I know we signed a lot of them. So, again, on behalf of the county council, thank you very much, and this is to show our
You're losing.
appreciation. The Wicomico County Council would like to express its sincere gratitude to Ms. Gail Barkovich and the rest of the commission for serving on the 2021 Wicomico County Redistricting Commission. The Redistricting Commission meets once every 10 years to prepare, publish, and make available to the public a plan of proposed councilmanic districts. The plan shall provide for councilmanic districts that are reasonably compact, contiguous, and substantially equal in population. Each commission member was carefully selected by the Wicomico County Council based on their vested interest in redistricting of Wicomico County and served on the commission on a voluntary basis. Ms. Barkovich and the rest of the commission's dedication to the citizens of Wicomico County is greatly appreciated, and their time is spent on the commission is very invaluable. Thank you to the commission for volunteering your time and expertise to serve on this commission. For 2021, the Wicomico County Redistricting Commission signed this date of November 16th, 2021 by the entire county council. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yes, and I have one for each of you. And if you have another comment?
I have nothing else to say. It just, it was an interesting project. I was on the other side 10 years ago because I was on the council. So I found this quite interesting, and I particularly want to thank Frank, because there was no way we could have done this without his knowledge and his background and his ability to take the state data and turn it into maps that we could look at and make decisions about. So hopefully he doesn't retire for another 10 years.
Thank you. Ms. Hartley?
Mr. President, before we proceed, I just want to mention that the next step is to have a public hearing on this.
Okay.
We can have that on December the 7th at 6 p.m. And also, all the maps that were considered are posted on the website, as well as the final map that they have presented the council today. All
And their
the
previous
information is-
meetings as well.
I'm sorry?
Their meetings as well.
Yeah, all their meeting minutes and everything are posted
Yes.
online, yes.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next on the agenda is a update by Chop Tank Electric on broadband.
Good, thank you. A nice crowd here. If you would, introduce yourselves for the record.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Valerie Conley, Vice President of Government Affairs and Public Relations for Chop Tank Electric Cooperative. With me today are Matt Holloway, who is a member of our Board of Directors, Leroy Sverduke, who is our Vice President of Engineering, and Tim McGahey, who is our Vice President of Technology. We appreciate the opportunity to come in today to just give you a brief update and to talk to you about a grant partnership we would like to suggest to the county. I guess I would start with saying, many of you remember we were in here 2 years ago to talk to you about getting into the broadband business, and we appreciate your support when we went through that process at the Maryland General Assembly. We had to become deregulated from the Public Service Commission so that we could bring to bear the infrastructure that we already have as a co-op, to utilize that to install fiber broadband in areas of our service territory in the 9 counties on the shore where broadband doesn't exist. And we are well underway with that project. Today, I'm going to give you a little bit of background and tell you a little bit about the grant process and why it's kind of urgent that we're meeting with you today. Tim is going to give you a little bit of update on the project that we currently have underway here in the county and in other parts of the service territory. And then Leroy will talk to you about why we are positioned well to be a partner for the grant that's currently out there. So we met a couple of weeks ago with the county executive and Mr. Posada and John Monar from the IT department, the director of IT, and it was a very positive meeting and a productive meeting, I think. We presented to them a map of areas in the county that we have identified that are unserved by broadband providers. We are proposing to submit a grant to the state of Maryland, a grant request to the Office of Statewide Broadband. Rick Gordon from the Office of Statewide Broadband was here a couple of weeks ago and presented to you about that grant, but just as a reminder, he has $97 million this year to award out in fiscal year 22. So that started on July 1 of 2021 and runs through June 30th of 2022. He's divided that out so that about $13 million of it will be awarded in smaller grants of $500,000 or lower, just to do some short extensions of broadband service. But larger grants ranging from $3 million to $10 million will be awarded for infrastructure development. And what we're proposing is to do some infrastructure development grants here in the county. The smaller grant deadline is December 23rd. The larger grant deadline is January 14th. The larger grant, we take a lot of the burden off the county because it gets submitted by the broadband provider with a letter of support from the county and a pledge of some of the cost share money.
Valerie, can you say those dates again? 'Cause that's important.
December 23rd is the date for the smaller grant.
Okay.
And that one is one that would be applied for by the county with an ISP partner. So a lot of the work is done by the county on that. The larger grants are due on January the 14th, applied for by the ISP or the internet service provider with a letter of partnership from the county and a pledge of support on the cost share. The unique thing about this grant is that the cost share or the matching funds is tiered in this grant process. And we believe all of the areas we're looking to serve in Wicomico County fall into the lowest tier for matching requirement, which is 10%. And what we would propose is that Chop Tank would pay 5% and the county would pay 5%. So we think we have a project that ranges close to $15 million. It would cover 1,400 unserved locations in your county. And 5% of that, the cost that the county would put up would be $758,000. This is unique because we've never seen a cost share match this low. And we're also concerned that there's not going to be a lot of money for rural infrastructure development in future years. This was a huge amount of money that the General Assembly and the governor worked to put out there this year, a lot of it because of what happened during COVID and the need that was identified. A lot of it came because of the federal money that was sent down to the state to be used for a project like this. And I know we're talking about the infrastructure bill that passed in Washington this past week or was signed yesterday. But the concern is that now there's going to start to be a redevelopment of infrastructure in more urban areas that is going to use a lot of the new money in future years. So we're looking at this as one of the really unique opportunities to grab as much money as you can for the rural infrastructure needs here in Wicomico County. And so we're here to say we have a plan. We're happy to share that at some point in order to preserve the competitive nature. If you talk to other ISPs on some of these projects, we didn't want to put the map on the table with all of our kind of cost and bidding opportunities. We are prepared to present that to the county so that the county executives team and your team can look at that. We can kind of describe it in broad terms today, but the map that we're looking at touches 4 of the 5 districts that were just on your map up there. We were kind of looking at that. And we would consider, so the grant only allows us to apply for areas that are unserved. So if they have service from any other provider right now, we can't include that in the grant area, but we're looking at that as kind of a launching area or a footprint. So we know we will build beyond that as we move forward to areas that maybe have some level of service, but people aren't satisfied with it, and we want to get to them with the service we provide. So I'm going to, and you guys are familiar with the co-op model, right? I was just going to mention that, but we're a not-for-profit. So we have no motive to raise a profit through this company. Even though the Chop Tank Fiber Company is a for-profit affiliate owned wholly by the nonprofit. So any profit from Chop Tank Fiber goes back to the nonprofit co-op. And it is either reinvested in this broadband business or it's returned to our members who own the company. So there is no profit motive. And we do, because we are a co-op, we have long-term borrowing authority, and we have relationships with vendors that allow us to be well prepared to do this project. I'm going to yield to Tim and Leroy so they can just give you a quick update on where we are with these other projects and then take any questions that you all have.
Thank you. Leroy, I'll start off with a little bit on what we've already done in the county and kind of how we got to that point where we actually initiated service in Wicomico County. Some of you may be aware that Maryland, well, let's go back, if you will, just a little bit to how that grant process works. The grant process from the state is geared towards last mile providers, ISPs, to get those dollars that are initiated through those grant processes. If there's not enough last mile providers to take advantage of those dollars, then there are projects put forth by Maryland Broadband Cooperative, a middle mile provider, which I know has presented at least a couple of sessions ago on how they interface with the last mile providers. And they will put together plans that the state will then pick from and initiate those builds to make sure those dollars get spent on some sort of fiber infrastructure in the state. And so, stepping forward, the grants that had been done in the past, the cost share was roughly 50%, I think, Val. So they weren't as many providers able to take advantage of that because of the capital requirements. Several of them weren't able to come forward with the capital requirements that were needed to fulfill all of the grant dollars that were allocated in those years. And so that's how those grant projects happened in Wicomico County. We saw that was right about the same time we started our project, started our build-outs. We were able to then take advantage of those build-outs because roughly about 60 to 70 locations that are right on the edge of where Maryland Broadband built out that infrastructure, we were able to do that just in the neighborhood portion. As a part of an extension of that build-out of what was already funded. And so we have completed most of that construction and already offering service and installed service. I want to say, and over half, maybe 60% of those folks that we opened up service to in Wicomico County in those areas. The only area we have left right now is a little bit of construction on Porter Mill Road, which is finishing up now. It's right in front of that Webster Estates neighborhood for any of you.
So it's near Hebron.
Okay,
It's
so-
outside of
Hebron.
So how many actual citizens will you be providing service to?
There were
Right.
55 to 60 in the Webster Estates community, I believe, and another, Matt, do you remember the full numbers on that? Another 68 total houses that we dropped off material to and offered to provide service to.
So you're going to be providing service to 60, okay.
They may not all accept it, but it's at the edge of the road right near their home. So whether they take it right now or the next person who lives there wants service, it's available at any time.
It's certainly the grant proposals in the areas that we're looking at would expand upon that and take it that much further, obviously. And so that construction is done. That was a project of opportunity. Once again, those dollars had already been spent under the previous grant program, so we took advantage of those, particularly since they were in our neighborhoods. that we already serve. And so it was a relatively easy thing to do with our crews already coming out of our Salisbury Regional Service Center to get those areas lit up.
And that grant money you pursued on your own? It
No,
wasn't-
that was the, if you will, the leftover funds that got
Maryland
Maryland
Broadband.
Broadband,
Okay.
allocated to Maryland Broadband.
So it wasn't a match from the county? or
It was
anything?
not in that
Okay.
case, but, and so I know that's an obvious question, why can't you just do this without a match from the county?
Yeah.
But, well, one, the grant that exists now, if we want to leverage almost $15 million, it requires participation from the ISP and the local government. There's a bidding sheet or a scoring sheet at the end, and in order to score all, to get into the highest category of scoring, there's a local participation, the ISP participation, and if there's a third party. And we are pursuing some additional grant money from third parties to get that extra scoring component into any of the grants that we're going to be submitting, so.
Now, is this different than what, because when Maryland Broadband was here, they said that the ISP providers did not, they could apply for the grant on their own,
Well,
as
they-
Comcast did, and they didn't have matching dollars locally, so.
Right, last year's grant opportunity, we did apply for it on our own, and it only required a letter of support from the county to say they wanted us to do work in the county. But this year, the way the grant opportunity is drawn up, it's unlikely to be awarded unless there is some matching funds from both the ISP and a local government provider. I mean, it could be submitted without that, but if
Yeah.
we're going to go to the work to try and submit it, we want to make sure it's the best possible opportunity. And again, it's a 5% commitment versus last year, money was at 50%, so.
So the broadband that we had in my district of Nanacoke, Tyask, and Bivalve, that was of no cost to the county.
That was a grant that was fully, so in the first couple of years of the Office of State Broadband with this grant money, they had $10 million for the first 2 to 3 years that they were granting out money, and there were very few applicants. We were not in the broadband business at that point. We were still trying to change the law so that we could launch through the co-op. And there weren't very many other broadband companies who could put up a 50% match or get a 50% match from a local government. And so the Office of Broadband gave that money as kind of a last resort opportunity to the Maryland Broadband Cooperative, who built middle mile fiber rather than fiber to the home and actually provided service. So they built more of a backbone in the community so that somebody else, some other ISP might come in and be able to actually do that last step and get it to the homes.
So will you be the ISP provider?
We will be. And we have some
But
of
that's
our...
competitive. I mean, anyone could be the ISP provider. Any of the other 10, 20 ISP providers
They could come
offer.
to you similarly and ask for a grant application as well, but
But they could do it on their own and just be the ISP provider, correct?
it's too expensive to get to rural areas that way, and that's why no one has built out in these rural areas. That's why you have so many unserved locations. The cost per mile and the cost of infrastructure with such a low density is nearly impossible to do without grant funding.
You know there are ISP providers there on that backbone.
There are.
Yeah.
But they are only serving the dense population down in.
Skipping all the rural and
Tyask and Bivalve down into Nanacoke, I mean, there's a provider there already serving those pockets, right?
Yeah.
But on your way down to that area,
Yeah.
a lot of those people are underserved or unserved on the way down there. The providers went all the way past all of those folks to get to those pockets of population and didn't hit the people along the way. We're hitting the people along the way. The economics of that is significantly worse than just running a really long cable down to serve hundreds of people versus hitting a handful of people along several miles. And that's the pockets that we're trying to fill in as a part of this grant application. I mean, there was a reason that the providers didn't pick those people up along the way, and it's simply economics as to why that hasn't
So you could go back in and pick those people up in that area.
That's our goal.
We can only use the grant money to pick up people who don't already have coverage. So all the 1,400 locations we've identified are people that don't have an opportunity for broadband at all. They're not being served by any other internet service provider, whether it's, so they have to, the standard to be able to declare someone unserved is 25 megabits per second download and 3 megabits per second upload. and they have to be below that. So, I mean, there's a chance somebody might have some wireless antenna somewhere, but if it can't get those speeds, it's considered unserved.
Was that upload or download speed? Because most
25
people
is
download.
25 is download, 3 is upload.
What we're offering to our members, since we're doing fiber to the home, which is a fiber optic cable with higher speeds, is 100 megabits up and down, same speed up and down, no data limits. So there's 100 megabits, a 250 megabit package, a gigabit package, and we do have available 2.5 gigabits for those folks who need something at a higher speed.
Yeah. Councilman Holloway?
Are there going to be any areas, or these areas that you're talking about serving, are they off the grid that you're on as far as serving electricity?
Right now, all those are on our electricity, most of them are on our electricity grid right now. But we are not prohibited from going beyond our electricity service territory. That's not, the electric service territory is kind of a regulated, established territory. We can go beyond that. So if there are areas in the county that don't have service but are not on our electric grid, we can get to them.
But as far as this grant goes, this will be used just for what's on your grid?
You can question again.
We have identified basically 4 areas that touch these people. Basically, those bounds of those areas would be submitted as part of the grant, and only locations inside of that area would be eligible or reimbursed through the grant process. Now, when we look at sort of density, the cooperative is positioned very well from a density perspective. Any of the places that have density are not served by the cooperative. When you look at where our lines go, it's the same problem that in the 40s, Delmarva Power and those wouldn't serve the rural farmers and them with power because they didn't think they could make any money off of it. So the cooperatives were formed through extensive funding from the federal government. And when you look at that now, a lot of that density still doesn't exist. And a lot of those places that we run as an electric cooperative are places that, Delmarva Power can't afford to go. We're seeing the same thing happen with, the Comcasts and the Verizons of the world, those big for-profit ISPs. They go to the developments, they go to the towns. They served, in the project that we were doing in Hebron, somebody is serving the city of Hebron. They're serving across the street from those 2 little developments, but there wasn't enough funding to cross the road to go into those developments, so they were left unserved. So when in the grant applications that we're submitting, we're running between about 5 households per mile and 8 households per mile on the average. So that is, you guys know what construction costs. That is not a lot of density, so the return there is basically non-existent. So your normal for-profit companies aren't approaching those areas.
And our maps overlay, if you look at the map of our member territory and the map of underserved, they almost match up entirely. It's a very small percentage that falls outside of our member territory that is underserved.
So I really want to thank you all for coming in. I appreciate it. Broadband's one of my interests, so I appreciate you all coming in. And just to be clear, this is an executive decision. This would mean to partner with someone for a grant. So I appreciate you coming in and explaining everything to us. And I know that the county executive and Mr. Monar are working on this project. And we do have other ISP providers that have requested to come in for work sessions after this. So I really do appreciate it. And I thank you for coming to the town hall that I had to. Well, I had it, but Mr. Holloway ran it.
So are there 2 pots of money, the rescue plan and now the infrastructure bill?
Well, the infrastructure bill that was just signed yesterday by the president has some broadband money in it. The federal government has 180 days to come up with some definitions of how they will use that broadband money, and it will be granted out through the NTIA, the National Telecommunications Infrastructure Administration. But the concern is if their definition of unserved becomes anybody who has less than 100 megabits up and down, which is fairly high speed, then the bulk of that money will end up being invested in areas that currently have service, but they don't have that high-speed service. And so as a rural community, and there are several groups that have been working to try and finally connect people in rural areas before we go back and try and rebuild the infrastructure in the urban areas. That is a concern. And so,
Do you know how much Maryland is getting with the infrastructure bill?
well, that one will, again, come down to the definition, because there is a chance for $100 million off the top that would be dedicated to the state of Maryland, and then any additional funds would be based on formulas from the definitions that are established in that process.
And why I ask is because our neighboring state, West Virginia, Senator Joe Manchin posted a tweet on November 6th that they will be getting $600 million
For broadband or in general from
for
infrastructure?
broadband from the infrastructure bill alone. So I was wondering
Yeah,
if we were
I
getting
guess
anything.
because they must know they have a higher level of unserved there.
I'm sure they do.
The only thing that we're sure of, and from both senators and from talking to Rick Gordon in the Office of Broadband, is the 100 million off the top that they've said will go to each state, and then the rest will be formula-driven.
Well, that 100 million would help.
Correct, Val. I mean,
Right,
with
the rule-
regards to
right.
the rules itself on how to use that money
Right.
still has not been defined yet.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's still a question.
Well, we're desperate in Wicomico County. Any more questions or comments?
I had a question. Thank you all
Mr. Cannon?
as well for being here. Appreciate that. We know there's a minimum of 6 ISPs, I guess, possibly still trying to, position themselves for this same broadband business. I guess my question to you, to give you the opportunity, since you are here, is how would you say for the county, how would Chop Tank distinguish itself, separate itself from the other ISPs who could be in here, in 2 weeks from now? What would you say might be that advantage? I don't know whether your electrical lines already create some type of an advantage or not, but where do you see yourself and position yourself as an advantage over the other ISPs for Wicomico County?
I'll start.
I was going to let Lee,
Oh,
because
okay.
he had that in his comments for what he was going to.
Oh, okay.
So we have a history of going and to underserved locations. We have shown a long-term stability of being able to provide electricity to those rural areas that don't have a high density. Really, that folds very, very nicely into what we're doing with broadband. Now, mixing in with our infrastructure also enables us to do it at a better cost.
So the infrastructure is the
Yeah,
poles,
so
the
the
backbone
poles, the
fiber,
backbone
the things
fiber.
we've already installed.
So all of that, because we installed a significant amount of fiber associated with our whole electric network. So getting to our substations, getting to the protected devices, so that those outage notifications fold back into the system. Married on top of all of that is we are a not-for-profit. So all money that comes in for our company basically is returned back to the members who own the company. So, if you guys are members of the cooperative and you get a capital credit check, that's all part of that whole process of, being a member of the cooperative and us folding those profits right back to those members.
And our warehousing.
Oh, yes, sorry. I left off a big thing. Currently, you guys are familiar with how much of a lead time there is on everything, how much of a shortage there is on equipment. Between what we have on order, so we were able to turn this project around in Hebron really quick because we had resources sitting in the yard. We have been placing stuff on order for over a year, warehousing it. We have some partnerships with some electric vendors that enabled us to basically bring stuff in way before we were going to need it so that it was sitting on the yard. We have about 1,000 miles of fiber cable on order, a combination of sitting in the yard and on order to be delivered between now and July of next year. So that's really positioning us very well to hit the ground running. We had a couple of projects that we did in our grant process this year the awards came in April.
June.
It came in June. We were immediately able to start because we had the material sitting on the ground. Though two of those demo projects, which had an 18-month lead time or available window for spending, should be done by the end of this year. They're about 90% done right now. So we were able to turn that around incredibly fast because we had the material. 6-month lead time on waiting for material is nothing, and here we are almost done with those projects.
Mr. Hastings?
Just to clear on the project, so we were saying you're rounding back with acting county executive's office right now. Is that the county puts up 758,000 roughly and reaching hopefully 1,400 homes? Is that right?
Right, so if so it's a $15 million project roughly. We have to cost the whole thing out. But that's where we are right now. So that would make it and all of those areas fall into the less than 8 homes per mile category. So it puts us in the 10% cost share, which we propose to split with the county. So we would put $758,000 up, and the county would put that same
really
amount up.
So it said from a personal note, I wish I had Chop Tank Electric in the city and Chop Tank Fiber instead of Delmarva Power and
Well, and I think
Comcast.
one of the other reasons that we would be a good partner on this project too is we do have a call center, a customer service center, and a process where there's, people from the community are the ones taking the calls from members with concerns, and we've got a member services division that gets on projects or concerns immediately, and we're going to use those same group of people and the same process when we handle broadband issues.
And to correct a statement that was said earlier, you said the big companies basically they couldn't do this what you're doing. They could, but they're for profit maximization. I love the fact that you all are there to try to fill in the gap that these individuals aren't served. These folks need to be served, and the fact that you're going out and that's a real public good. So I really appreciate that.
Councilman
Look
Holloway?
at Josh is any place that could have been served has service right now, or it's at least available. The spots we're looking at, like they said, if you overlay our service territory with the cooperative, it matches up because those areas just don't make economic sense for these for-profits to go to.
Councilman Holloway?
You serve more than just Wicomico County, correct?
We have service in 9 counties on Maryland's Eastern Shore. Not everybody in all 9 counties, but the rural areas starting at the bottom part of Cecil County all the way down to Worcester.
So are you applying for these same grants for every county?
We're applying in many counties. We are partnering with them, yes.
Because you do serve Worcester, correct? So will there be any overlap as far as construction costs and things like that with Worcester County and Wicomico? In other words,
Overlap in, I guess I'm.
Take advantage of the resources.
Pardon me?
We plan on taking advantage of those construction resources, so definitely the more projects we have in the surrounding areas, the greater advantage we're going to have on taking advantage of construction resources to get it done, 1, at a better price, 2, with being able to throw more resources at
I
it.
just want to make sure this money that if the county puts money up, it's to serve our county.
Oh, it
Absolutely
is,
is.
absolutely.
And the thing about the cost share money is it's all reimbursable. That's the other thing that is good partnering with the co-op. We do have those financial resources to do the entire build, and then we get reimbursed from the state and reimbursed from the county after the work is done. You wouldn't be putting the money on the table up front and waiting for us to do the job.
And our systems we've got fairly sophisticated systems because of what we do already on the utility side, and having been heavily regulated, we have to do some pretty strict accounting on exactly those job costings. So to know that a job that's getting done in Wicomico County is those funds and are being paid for out of the funds that are allocated. So that's normal and typical for us and what we've done.
Ms. Ackley?
Okay, I have 3 last questions, I promise. I know, I'm always pulling you guys. So what is the cost to the citizens? So the ones that you have at Westbrook?
You mean, what are the subscription
service,
prices?
yes.
So our subscription, actually, I have some.
100 meg package is $85, and that includes everything, the equipment and everything. So and if they sign up when we're first doing construction in the area, we don't charge any installation fees.
Okay.
So there really is just an application fee essentially that's added on to that first bill that they get. So that's $85, and then it's
$99.95 for the 250 megabit package, and $139.95 if someone wants gigabit service. We
Okay.
did recently adopt a low-income program.
Adjusted.
So if someone qualifies for the Home Energy Assistance Program that the state has, they would qualify for a discounted rate on that lowest
Oh, very good.
standard rate.
And then the last question I had, what other counties are you working with or have worked with?
On grants or where we're going to build service out? Because.
Both.
Okay, both. Well, we have submitted grant applications and believe we will be, none of them are final yet because the filing deadline again for that smaller grant is December 23rd. So there are a few counties who are in the final process of writing those up, so they're not submitted.
For the upcoming grant.
Oh, for the past grants? Okay, sorry, for the past grants. Last year, we partnered with Caroline, Somerset, and Queen Anne's County on the larger infrastructure grants. And we partnered with Somerset County and Caroline County on smaller kind of demo projects using the smaller grant for them.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Right. So I have a question. I know we're running behind. I've had issues with the internet provider that I have, so I've had to make a phone call. I call 1-800, the name of the company, and I'm always curious. So I asked the person 3 separate times. I said, "Where are you from?" Said the Philippines. So if you all do service in the county, where are your call takers going to be?
Right now, our call center is in our Denton office. We
So
do
it
have
is
a few
local.
call center, or a few people that take calls out of our Salisbury Regional Service Center. And if it's a broadband call that they can't answer, you get Tim.
Not really. You get some people that work for me, but I mean, not really. You probably
At this
wouldn't want
point,
me.
it's very local. If we get to the point where it becomes a lot of calls and a lot of customers, we may bring on an additional call center, but it will be locally based.
Yeah,
rather
and
than-
I think that's important. Thank you all again for coming. And for the record, this is information only at this time. But
Right.
we appreciate your time and the presentation. So thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you again.
Hey, guys.